Well, good morning. Oh, there's my co-host riding into town.
Hey, how's it
Good
going
morning.
this week?
Well, we're doing good. How are you doing?
Hey, I caught a big fish last week, another big
Oh,
fish. So I'm a happy guy. It doesn't take much to keep me happy.
no, I guess not. And
Yeah,
who are
yeah.
you? Who are you today?
Well, I'm Doug Smith, and I'm broadcasting from the shores of the Ottawa River, right here in Ottawa, Canada's capital. And you want to talk politics? You want to talk health, performance, anything like that? We're here to talk.
We're here to talk, and it's a beautiful day here in the Great Northwest, Alberta, Canada. And we're really super excited today, aren't we, Doug? Because guess who's here first of all? Look who just showed up.
Oh, Jay, what that well, see, that's a surprise to me. See, now we're going off the cuff. It's great to see you, Jay.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic. You have a good weekend.
Well, thanks for having me on the show today, guys. I'm really excited too because, hey, remember, I'm just down the highway from Buffalo, right? So I
That's right.
remember. Oh, and speaking about that picture that you sent me, that's a huge fish there, Doug. You texted me the pic. I love that.
You saw it. Huh?
It
It fed 8 people. That an 8 pound pickerel. Just I'm not bragging. 8 pound pickerel though.
That is awesome. So I'm promoting as we're speaking, just to let you guys
Okay, well,
know.
just keep promoting because
Yeah.
Doug's been doing some other kind of fishing too. He's been fishing around for some great people that we can bring to the show and have others get to learn more about them. So, we had Jeff Brubaker here a week or so ago, and today we have the amazing
Tony McKegney.
So let's bring Tony in. He likes to be called Tony,
Hey,
I think.
How you doing, guys?
Hi.
How are you, Jay?
Hey, Tony. Thanks for coming.
You're close to Buffalo. Were you at Burlington or Hamilton, or where you at?
I'm in Burlington. So yeah, I was in Hamilton today. I was in Hamilton this morning. So I feel like I'm part of Buffalo. Plus, late night, Where Are Your Children? Rick Jenner, all the guys on TV. All the announcers. So I feel like I'm Buffalo. I'm part Buffalo. So Tony.
Yeah, I've got some good buddies of mine come down for hockey games and baseball games here from Burlington, Ontario. So I know it's very close by. And when the Jays were here, when the COVID was on, it was great to see a lot of Canadians that came down from Toronto, Burlington, Hamilton, the Niagara region to our area. And they still actually come down here because it's much more reasonable to be here than going to the game in Toronto. But I was going to say, Doug, when you're riding in, like you're riding a horse, were you trying to be on a Western when you're in LA playing there?
It was like a Western in LA. It was crazy. You would have gotten as much trouble as I got in. So that's the thing. Like your career, I went and printed it out, and the printer just kept going, and it just kept going. And the numbers are just absolutely phenomenal. You're a true superstar, Tony, and I stayed clear of you when I was out on the ice. That's for sure. I didn't bug you much out there.
Can I jump in?
I've got an interesting Hamilton story for you, Jay. My mother's family was all from Hamilton, and my uncle Stu had a bakery, and he actually trained the original staff at Tim Hortons in 1964 as to how to make glazed donuts on Ottawa Street in Hamilton, Ontario. And I've got pictures of everything with Tim Horton and Ron Joyce.
That's an iconic story, Tony.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I still don't get a discount at Tim Hortons, though, even though that was a fact.
You should get free Tim Hortons. Okay. All you guys should get free Tim Hortons.
I have to say, I'm so excited as a lifelong hockey fan, a Leaf fan. My dad was a Marley. Hockey's in my blood. So to have two, NHL hockey players that we're talking to today, it's just like, it's remarkable because as a kid growing up watching you guys on TV,
right?
Who would think I'm ever going to be talking to you guys? So I really thank you for taking the time and for Doug for setting this up today. Like, Tony, tell us, can you share a story like between you two, like in past years? Like, do you have a story to share at all, maybe?
Well, how we met is a great story, Tony.
Jay, it's kind of a University to have 1 year at McGill, and my mother was a student there at the same time. And anyway, my father went back to Oxford, and my mother was trying to raise me as a young single parent back in the late 50s, and she eventually put me up for adoption. And there were 4 different families that were vying for me through a religious sector. And I got adopted by a family from Sarnia, Ontario. My father was head of Imperial Oil. And it's interesting, they adopted one other black child, obviously white family, and had 3 children of their own. And each winter, my parents built a hockey rink in their backyard, a basketball court. It's one of the first hockey rinks in the southern part of the city where I grew up in Sarnia, Ontario. And 5 future NHL hockey players grew up playing in that hockey rink. I was asking Jay, what years did your dad play for the Marlies? Because I played against the Marlies.
He was 51-52. Bobby Bond was his defense partner. I think he played. Played 4 years. I think 51-52 was his last year. He was 19, and I think Bobby Bond was only 50. And my dad was going, this kid, Bobby Bond, he's better than me. I'm 19. He's 15. He's a punk. He's amazing. My dad would tell us so many stories, like just, how back then they would only pick 6 all-stars, 1 per position. That's it. And my dad was one of them. My dad was an all-star. And then he got drafted by the Blackhawks. Ivan, I forget his name now, his last name, but he was the general manager at the time, who was Macedonian, by the way. And then my dad got hit by a car. So he got hit by a car during the summer, broke both his legs, and spent the next year in the hospital bed until Tommy Ivan, that's his name. Tommy Ivan came to the hospital and said, George, we would like to offer you an extension to come to the training camp next season. What my dad said, I got married, I kind of moved on, and now he became the head referee for the Industrial League, for men's industrial. So I used to go with my dad to George Bell and Ted Reeve and Chesswood and Westwood. And short little story, I remember my dad brought me, maybe it was George Bell or something. Not George Bell, maybe Westwood, one of the old arenas where the boards were really low and they didn't really have any glass. And I remember my dad says, one of the players flipped a puck to you and you were like 10 or 8 and it hit you in the knee and you started to cry. And he goes, Dad said, I'm not bringing you to the rink anymore. Like that's it. You're done.
Jay, my dad have been St. Mike's perhaps.
It might have been St. Mike's. I think it was St. Mike's. There you go. Yeah, the low boards. Yeah, and the low glass.
I grew up playing against the Shopsies, who became the Marlies. And we played at all the rinks you mentioned, including later North Toronto had a rink. And when we were kids, every once in a while they would pluck somebody from our hometown to play for the Marlies. And you wanted to play for the Marlies because you got to play Maple Leaf Gardens. And you got the hand-me-downs from the Toronto Maple Leafs. So all these guys were wearing tacks and had the gloves of the NHL. And, I had my first pair of tacks. Thank God there was a fire sale at a sports store that had caught on fire. My dad bought a brand new pair of tacks for $40. And actually, I was so excited I wore them to bed. On the side, and I put number 4 on because I wanted to be Bobby Orr.
I love that. I love the hand-me-downs. My dad used to say when he was a Marley, the Marlies used to provide him with hockey sticks, right? And so he had a whole bunch of hockey sticks in the basement. So he would be, at school or working or whatever. My family owned restaurants, so he was always at the restaurant with my grandfather. And everybody would come over and steal the sticks. My grandmother would just go, oh, yeah, go downstairs. But you know who would come over and take the sticks? Was Steve Stavro. Wow. Yeah, because we were related, and he used to come over and take the sticks before he was Steve Stavro, right? Obviously. And he used to go, hey, George, can I come to the game? And my dad used to give him Marley tickets. So 50 years later, I broke into the entertainment business, and my dad called Steve and said, hey, my son's breaking into the entertainment business. Steve, do you think you could? He said, yeah. So I go see him, and he goes, okay, I'm not giving you any money. And I said, no. He goes, but I will make a call for you. And he made a call for me. But he said, when I make the call, Jay, you're on your own. Like, you got to shine. And he really helped me. Unfortunately, the contact didn't help me at the time, but I was eternal grateful. But my dad said, see that 50 years later, somebody can help you. So remember that as you grow up, Jay, because you never know who you meet down the road. It was a valuable lesson. I just thought I'd share that because you were sharing about the hand-me-downs, Tony. Sorry, I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, you're not going to hijack this interview.
Yeah, you know what? One of the funniest stories Tony has told me. One of the funniest stories that I got to bring this up, Tony, because I love you when you tell it. It playing with Willie Plett, and what your relationship was playing with him. Explain to these guys. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, just Dougie, he was just a good friend and my teammate and line mate. And I was quite a big scorer then, and I ended up setting him up for more goals than he'd ever scored in his career. And he would just sort of look at me and said, "You're going to extend my career by 5 years." But I used to get somebody would shadow me from time to time and just follow me around. And Willie would get back to the face-off dot, and Willie would realize what was going on. And basically he said, look, come on over to my side. So I would go from the left side over to the right side, and Willie'd be waiting there with a two-hander and a cross-check for anybody who was following me around. And that was the end of that. But I'll tell you one more funny story about Willie. Our coach became Lauren Henning, who had played the Islanders and won Stanley Cups. He was a third-line center. And he was giving us a rah-rah speech one day about playing tougher. So Willie, right in the middle of the meeting, jumps up and says, Lauren, we all played against you. Are you kidding me? And everybody? And that was the end of the meeting. That was Willie.
Wow.
Getting done growing up was an advantage because my brothers were older than me, 4, 5, 6, 7 years older. And typically when I was 3, when I was started at 4 or 5 years old, I was playing against 4 people 4 years older than me. And I was actually dominating those guys. And when I got to my age group, which was playing might hockey, squirt hockey, I just dominated because it was like candy after playing against these older guys. But it was just an advantage because before the internet and before a lot of television, the only time we came in from that rink in the winter time was Saturday night to watch the Toronto Maple Leafs. And other than that, we gave the rink to the girls on Saturday night to Figures game. So other than that, we were on that rink, go to school, like I come home at lunch, get on the rink, I go right after school, do the homework, evening. My dad put a set of lights up along the clothesline and on the back of the house, floodlights, so we could skate at night. He built boards, he was an engineer, and we had everything. It was kind of funny in the spring, when the snow melted, you'd find $25 that had gone over the boards into the snow.
So yes, I want to know the connection, Doug. Your connection with Tony. Do you guys play together? Like you got to
No, you know what? We both played for Buffalo. We just missed each other. He was on the wing. I was playing center most of the time. But we always were crossing paths. We played hundreds of shifts against each other, I'm sure. But never played together. It wasn't until MP Gord Brown, who unfortunately passed away about 6-7 years ago on Parliament Hill, introduced us because Tony was spending time down in the Gananoque area and I was in Ottawa. So we ended up coming together, and ever since the first time we spent a little bit of time together, we've been friends and spent hundreds and hundreds of hours together. I really wish we would have had a chance to play together, Tony. It would have been maybe I would have got to 30 goals. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Doug, I was going to say, Doug was friends with a couple of guys that I played with in juniors and obviously NHL. So I sort of, when somebody's a high draft pick, which Doug was, you kind of follow their career to see how they are advancing, how they're doing. And when Doug moved around a little bit, and then came to Buffalo, it's just one of those things. He's just a player that stuck there, everything is close by. It was very rare. But for Doug's mother to have that dedication, it's one of the coolest stories I've heard.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
That's very. So, Doug, you were there. So Tony was probably there before you, right? Like Tony was there first, and then you came afterwards, Doug, to Buffalo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
because he played with Rick Martin.
yeah, I was
and
gonna say
Rick,
you played the French Connection. Did you play
So
with the
Rick-
French Connection?
Yeah, we both played with Rick Martin, but I played with Rick in LA, and then I went to Buffalo. Right. So we played with Rick, but I never played with the French Connection. I only played with Gilbert Perreault. So I have a lot of film with us playing together.
So Tony, you played with pretty much, like, including yourself, all the superstars from Boston, from Jerry Corab to Schoenfield to the French Connection to Don Edwards, all those guys, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that when the Buffalo Sabres, I got to know the ownership group quite well. I still know two of them that are still alive that own the Sabres. And they had a tough time. It took them 8 years to get the franchise. And the NHL thought the market was too small. So they went to Philadelphia, they went to Pittsburgh, they went to other cities that were larger markets, LA being one of them. So anyway, saying that the market research was that they thought that 1/3 of the season ticket holders would come from the Niagara region. And sure enough, when the team started, 5,000 people from the Canadian side became season ticket holders, which gave them a sellout every game. But they banked on that, and it actually happened. But, you know, the guys like Jim Schoenfeld, Danny Gare, the draft picks that they made, Gilbert Perreault, Richard Martin, on down the line, there was quite a list of guys that became superstars, star players, that were drafted high by the Buffalo Sabres. And the team made the finals after 4.5, 5 years in the league. Lost to the Philadelphia Flyers.
Philadelphia, the fog game, the fog game.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So anyway, it was just a franchise that it didn't take them long, and obviously Gilbert Perreault was the most fun I had was watching him in practice. He was loose. Typically at night he would, have a few beers. He got some chicken wings. And then first thing in the morning, he was just still in a good mood, and he just did things that were amazing. But he was just loose and laughing and having a good time in practice, and it made everybody else enjoy practice just watching him. And I got to find a line with him at certain times, and it was amazing because you got mesmerized. You ended up watching him, and you got caught up in that, and you had to get your mindset out of the fact that you were watching what he was doing versus playing with him, sort of thing. So that was an adjustment.
Wow,
Gilbert used to pick me up when I got traded to Buffalo in his Jeep. Remember his Jeep that he had, that old rickety Jeep? So he used to pick me up and drive me to the rink in that, like he loved being out in the woods too, huh? I mean, that's what Gilbert lived for.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's interesting right now, Jay looks like the cat who just swallowed the canary.
I'm promoting you.
Well, I know, but you're so smiley and happy.
I am, because like I said,
can tell. But you're just
Tony
reminding me of the cat who swallowed the canary. Just saying.
Well, as a hockey fan, I'm really critical of hockey players because I'm a hockey fan, right? So for Tony, I remember when Tony came into the league and I went, wow, Buffalo got another great player. Like, oh my God, this guy's tough too. I remember you were tough, Tony. I remember the Leafs go, oh, don't go after Tony. No, don't go after Tony. I remember the Leafs saying that. So it was like your career just like, it was great. You were number 8, right? Number 8. Were you number 8?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, number 8. Right?
I
remember you. This is great.
Yeah, I got really lucky, Jay. My first year, I ended up learning how to weight train with a guy that played in the CFL from my hometown. And I went from 190 pounds to 205 pounds in a summer. And it was just pure muscle. And at that time, like a $180 was a good size. And I was 205 as a forward. And I was just running over guys, being that I was 205 pounds. And Gilbert. Great balance, being bow-legged like Bobby Orr.
Bobby Orr, that's right.
These great skaters, Don Rattel, guys were bow-legged, and they had better balance that way.
Can you share like a memorable ice story that just sticks in your mind, Tony, after all these years, because you have such an illustrious career? Just something that you can really sticks in your mind on the ice, whatever that moment might be. Maybe a fight, maybe a goal, maybe.
There's a great memory of involving Gilbert Perreault. We beat Vancouver 2 years in a row in the playoffs, and back then 16 played 1, 15 played 2. And we finished second overall in the league, and Vancouver finished 15. So it was a long flight. It was back then. It was a 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5 series. One of those two, probably 3 out of 5. So we went to Vancouver, and we were down by a goal in the game in the third period. So the last thing we wanted to do was stay 2 more days in Vancouver. We just wanted to get home. So 2 times in the third period, Gilbert Perreault picked up the puck in our own end, and I watched it firsthand. I was on the ice. And he went through 4 guys, went in, deep to goalie, and scored. So 3-3, 4-3, end of story. We're on a red-eye back to Toronto. And Richard Martin, crazy story. It was 7:47. It was during the time a lot of Asian people were touring Vancouver, just different places, if you will. LA, used to see them just touring Japanese and Asian people. So sure enough, we're in Toronto. Everybody's tired. It's 7 a.m. now. And we're all punch drunk and tired and can't wait to get on a bus to go to Buffalo from Toronto Airport Pearson. So sure enough, the luggage was not coming out. Okay? So sure enough, we're waiting. Everybody's getting impatient. Everybody. Plane full of people waiting for their luggage. So sure enough, the conveyor belt starts. And Richard Martin comes through the chute with a trench coat on, 3-piece suit, his pants rolled up to his knees, and he goes right through the carousel, all the way in, out, and then back through the chute. He went back and figured out how to start the carousel. And the luggage didn't even come out. It was just him on the carousel, and the whole thing lost it. And
Wow.
It was hilarious, but it just broke the tension. We were all tired, and it just made everybody laugh. But the whole plane joined in with it, and it was Richard Martin.
I'm sure you have 1,000 stories like that, Tony. That's so good. You know what? I'm gonna remove myself because, like Laurie says, I'm gonna hijack the interview. So, but you know what? Before I do, I wondered if you would like to do this at a future show, Tony. And you can say no right away. But I watched a real great segment on Reggie Jackson, and he was talking when he was in Oakland A's about how it was behind the scenes, and I was so blown away by what he was saying, and it was so educational for what he was saying. And I won't get into it, but it was like, wow, like people are like that, like really, like that's. And I thought it was so enlightening and educational. And I'd love another time, maybe if we could talk about that, because I think again, because we are the Disability Channel, right, and we face our own discriminations and over the years and everything. And I think the more we can bring it into the light, the better it is for everybody, right?
I was going to say, Jay, that I was lucky enough in 1980. I got to spend an evening with Reggie Jackson and O.J. Simpson.
Oh, wow.
And Doug will remember it was on Rodeo Drive at a place called the Daisy. So we're all there, and it was Super Bowl week. The Pittsburgh Steelers were playing the LA Rams in Pasadena. And the Pittsburgh Steelers stayed at our hotel in Newport Beach. We were staying out there. And we came into town, and 4 or 5 of the Buffalo Bills were in the new OJ that played for the Bills. And I got invited with Danny Gare to be with them, and Reggie Jackson was there.
Wow.
So I got to spend the evening with those guys. And anyway, Reggie got mixed up and he started calling me Tom. And I didn't correct him. I just went with Tom.
That's great. Well, OJ was my second favorite player behind Dan Marino. I know he had a bad history off the field, but on the field, he was my best favorite running back, OJ Simpson. Power and speed.
Well, the thing about Jay, about Reggie Jackson back in Oakland, I just saw a highlight from the All-Star game, 1971, and those uniforms were absolutely crazy and incredible. And then when Charlie Finley bought the Oakland Seals, he incorporated the same thing with the white skates and the sweaters. And I think, Dougie, the LA Kings, wasn't that yellow kind of similar to Oakland sort of thing? Or not?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. Well, I think the LA King was a little bit more vibrant, wasn't it? A little more vibrant color of the Kings.
Yeah. It was similar.
Similar.
Yeah, very similar.
Similar.
I remember the yellow, and I just remember nobody else had that back then, the bright yellow with the Kings. When I first came to them, before they went to the black jerseys. But I just remember the Oakland A's and just the flair, and Reggie was there. That would be interesting to see that documentary piece, because I'm sure he's got some interesting stories to tell, because, you know, he was one of the first black superstars.
Well, he was actually talking at this year's, I think it was this past All-Star game, and that's what they were talking to him on the field about his experiences with Charlie Finley and with Rollie Fingers. He goes, and he just said, the players on my team, they would say, hey, if Reggie can't come in here, we're not coming in. He said, it was the players on my team and Mr. Finley. He said, Mr. Finley really went to bat for me, you know, and then all the players followed because I was just one of the guys, you know, and the players couldn't understand why, like, he's one of the team. What are you talking about? So anyways, I'm going to let you guys go. Tony, I'd love to talk to you about that. Really, thank you for being on the show.
We'll bring it back together and talk about how we highlight Tony, because I mean, I've spent years talking to him and I hear new stories all the time. It's really incredible. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal how much you remember Tony. Thanks, Jay, for bringing that. I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you for letting me come on, and thank you.
I learned a lot about you, right? I you know, like you know a lot of stuff about hockey.
See you guys. Bye.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm glad you guys got to meet. That was a surprise for me, Tony, and so it's excellent.
Yeah. What's Jay's background? You mentioned something about.
Well, he owns the network. He owns the network that we are broadcasting from, the Disability Channel.
Okay.
And he has a book that he's written called The Life of an Irish Street Gang Member.
Nice.
And what do you know, Doug? That's all I know.
Well, you know, he's got
Family
this
was
documentary being done of his life right now out of California. Like Sony Records is involved, and you know, it's a really exciting time for Jay, because he's lived his life just trying to help so many people all the time, and you know, nobody's really, I don't think, told his story like it's going to be told in the future. So it's very exciting to know that somebody like that gets their story told, and he can share with you the details when you guys get back together. But I know that there's a documentary in the works. There's been several of you, but you know, you want to make sure it's done right. What's happening in that space right now, Tony?
Actually, Doug, we found out the budget to do a documentary piece is extremely expensive to do. You need to have a strong backer. You need to almost sell the piece before you make the piece. My son has investigated this with some entities out of California, some other people. But we thought it would be a little bit easier to get done. We have footage and so forth, but it's an expensive proposition to do. And if I win the lottery, that'll be the first thing I'll do.
Well, I mean, there's also getting the right backing too, Tony. So like the relationship with Jay gives your story an opportunity for exposure to people that it never would have been exposed to. Because we're just touching the tip of the iceberg here, you know, like your personal story. Like, tell me a little bit more, because when you told me that when you saw Grant Fuhr, that was the third. Was it the third black player that you'd seen playing in the NHL?
Yeah, you know what, Doug? From the time I grew up, I hadn't played against another black hockey player in organized hockey for my life until I think 1982. Grant Fuhr came in the league, and then Ray Newfeld came in right around the same time, probably around your draft year. Those guys in your era. And it was just an oddity. I played in Toronto. I played all over the place, playing in the playoffs in Ontario, and then going into Michigan and all these places. So for me, you know, when I got on the ice, I was a hero at home. But when I went on the road, it was like I thought my middle name was the N-word. Nobody was ready for a black hockey player to dominate, and I pretty much had the puck all the time. That's what I was used to. It was almost like being on the rink, where it was almost like a game of keep away. And the other players on my team weren't that great, so if you pass the puck to them, the chances of getting it back were not very good. It was like throwing the puck over a cliff, because you're never going to see it again. So subsequently, I just hung onto the puck, knowing that it was to pass to somebody else, sort of thing, maybe outside of a couple of people. It just wasn't happening. So, but I told Grant Fuhr, I said, because I was still getting, even in NHL, we go to cities, and I was still just waiting for the word to drop down, right? So I told Grant Fuhr, I said, "You're lucky, the SOP, you get to put a mask on." So they were you outside of when the game's over, you take your mask off. So I used to joke with him. I said, "You lucky SOB, nobody knows you're black."
Yeah, what a great point that is, you know, because half the time people wouldn't have any idea until after the game where you're out there, like, you know, skating around, obvious. And you had some really, I mean, there were some teams you played for that weren't in the NHL, and you ended up in some precarious situations as you were on your road, right? One of the stories you told me was about them not knowing because your name was McKegney, and they brought you there. Tell us that story, and then they realized that you weren't Irish.
Well, just the fact that the last name was threw people off because it was an Irish name. My dad was adopted father was from Ireland, born there, and so forth. But in saying that, I got a funny story. I got paired off with Ray Newfeld. It was one of those ones where five guys paired off with five guys back in the day, right? So sure enough, I get paired off with Ray Newfeld, and we get into a scuffle, right? Not much wrestling match. And in between periods, Rick Martin comes over and says, "You know what? That was a black on black crime."
Oh my gosh!
So that was Rico's take on that situation.
The only two black guys in the league are fighting each other. Yeah, it doesn't make it.
Yes. So Rick Martin came up with that line. So in between periods, the benches were side by side, as you remember. So sure enough, Pat Routette playing for Hartford was an agitator. So sure enough, Scotty Bowman jumped over the boards between the first and second period and challenged Pat Routette to a fight on the ice in between the benches.
The coach?
Oh.
That happened the same night that happened.
The winningest coach of all time challenges the other coach to a fight between periods.
Yeah, they were yelling back and forth as Scotty did during the game, and at the end of the period, Scotty was trying to rile us up, and it was off of this 5-on-5 thing with Ray Newfeld, right? So that happened in the same game, the same night.
Oh my gosh!
Oh my God! And then there's like Don Perry is a funny one. You've seen a bunch of things where the coaches try to dominate a player that's successful, but you know who was Don Perry talking to when he told him he wanted to teach him how to be tough?
I can't remember.
Maybe
Brubaker told that story, perhaps.
Big huge guy that Don Perry told him that he needed to get tougher, and this guy was the toughest guy in the league at the time, and he looked at Don Perry's face and he said, "Look at my face. Look at your face. I don't need your help with taking care of myself." It was one of those stories,
Oh, wow.
Because players used to stand up to their coaches,
Dave Hutchinson, maybe Dave Hutchinson, perhaps.
Yeah, could have been, but players, it's so different today. Like, there's no like battles. How many battles did you see between coaches and players that today, I mean, they would have lost their jobs?
Yeah, Doug, today my buddy works for the Sabres, and he just said that nobody wants to hurt anybody's feelings anymore. Looking at anybody sideways or saying the wrong thing. Everything's sensitive with the money and the this and the that.
Oh, my God.
And in Buffalo, you had 3 coaches that never played a game in the NHL. And what are they going to say? And from a player standpoint, somebody running a power play that never played on a power play in the National Hockey League. And what are they going to tell you? And you're making $7 million a year. So that's sort of today's game. It's changed. The personalities, this, that. I was going to say, Laura, where are you at in Alberta?
I live in a town called Drayton Valley. We're about an hour and a half southwest of Edmonton.
Okay. I'm sure I've got relatives that live in Alberta at different places.
Okay. Yeah, I'm originally from Halifax, though, and Ron Joyce used to be my neighbor.
Yeah, it was nice when Edmonton came in the league. It was nice to group in with our trip. We typically would play Winnipeg, Edmonton, or vice versa. And Edmonton was sort of a small town. At the time, and it became bigger with the Oilers coming there. And the other thing that happened that was filmed there at the time was FCTV, and sort of put Edmonton on the map.
Okay.
And John Candy used to come to the hockey games in Edmonton as they were filming FCTV there. And the rivalry between Calgary and Edmonton was classic.
Oh, it still is.
It's almost like Montreal, Quebec.
Yes.
It's that type of a fever. So Doug, should be playing at Edmonton, would have had a sense of that.
Yes.
And not just in hockey. We're talking everything. Culture, economy, sports, entertainment. They're still, the Edmontonians and the Calgarians, it's like 2 different countries.
When we first had to go to Edmonton, I'll tell you, I saw a bumper sticker on a car.
Yeah.
And it said, "Please, Lord, the next time there's an oil boom, don't let me piss it away."
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, I live in an oil town. Yeah.
Yeah, that was on a bumper sticker that I saw down the main drag in Edmonton.
Well, now on the bumper stickers, you'll see, "We love gas and oil." Around here in this neck of the woods, we love gas and oil. So don't be messing with it.
Interesting, Laura, memory. My dad was involved with some guys from Standard Oil and Exxon in the United States. My dad was one of the lead engineers with Imperial Oil in Canada. And my dad ended up helping to invent ethanol back in the 1965. And he brought a sample of it home, testing it, and it was marked ethanol. And I remember him showing it to me. And then every time I go to get gas now, I see 10% ethanol. Oh. And I think of my dad, who was sort of involved with some American people in formulating and creating ethanol, which is pretty cool memory.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my dad worked for an oil company only in Nova Scotia. He worked at the Texaco oil refinery. And I told this story twice this week already, guys. Now, there's a connection here when you mentioned your dad, because my dad worked originally when I was a little kid. He worked for a big steel company, and they had a box at the Montreal Forum. So every Thursday night, my dad and I had a date night, and it was the hockey game. And when we lived away from Nova Scotia, because he worked in other provinces, whether we liked it or not, we had to sit and watch Hockey Night in Canada, Don Messer's Jubilee, and There wasn't. Remember, you guys are too young for this, but the Plouffe
Lawrence
family.
Welk.
Yeah, Lawrence Welk, all that. But it was
Laurie,
to keep our roots. You see, to keep us with our roots.
Laurie, I'll tell you a very funny story about Wayne and Schuster.
Okay. Yes. There we go.
You remember Wayne and Schuster?
Yes.
Doug?
Yeah, Doug, you're the baby. Are you here?
Anyway, I'll tell you a great story. My dad graduated from the University of Toronto in 1940.
Oh.
And then went to the war. So anyway, he's at his 40th graduation in Toronto at U of T, and he graduated with Wayne and Schuster. So anyway, Wayne and Schuster used to sit 10 rows behind the visitors' bench at Maple Leaf Gardens.
Okay.
So my dad was going to be coming to Buffalo with my mother after the graduation. It was close, Toronto to Buffalo. So sure enough, he introduces himself to Wayne and Schuster. My dad was like that. He didn't talk to anybody. So they said, "Oh, Mr. McKegney." And my dad says, "Yeah, my son plays for the Buffalo Sabres, Tony McKegney." And they said, "Well, wait a minute, isn't he a black player?" And my dad says, "Yeah, that's my son." So when my dad comes to Buffalo, the first story he tells me when he got out of the car was about what he did with Wayne and Schuster that afternoon in Toronto. And they couldn't believe it. They were trying to figure out the connection.
Right.
The two, and my dad says, "Yeah, that's my son."
That's my son.
But like Tony, it's a blur. It must be a blur to the people who are listening to this, because you tell a story of misunderstanding or confusion in your whole life. You've run into it your whole life. You don't know anything but that. You know, they're sitting there wondering, like, how did you figure out your way through this? Like, was it your incredible positivity? Was it what was the dynamic that allowed you to withstand, you know, the things that you've been called, the places that people have tried to put you, right? Like, how have you resisted that?
Yeah, you know what, Doug? I was going to allude to this before when we were talking about the upbringing thing.
Mm-hmm.
In a town of 50,000 people, where I grew up, starting in Ontario, there were 10 black people that lived in town. And the way that we got by was through sports and through hockey and baseball, particularly. And we got to know the other families, and the other families just realized that we were just normal people. And they sort of applauded my parents being white and obviously origin and having adopted black children. And so sports was the conduit that got us melding into society, if you will. And that's sort of, without sports, I guess it would have been a difficult transition, perhaps. But with sports, we got to know a lot of people. And the parents all knew each other, were friendly. And again, sports was what ingratiated us into society in a town of that size with that few minority people there. And there was one other family in town that had probably 6 kids or something, and nice people. Anyway, that was sort of the common denominator.
Well, it sounds like you were able to rapidly build community, right? And people were the people around you and your family rapidly became conscious, right? Like you taught them too, right? I mean, there was nobody else to teach them. You came in and your family set the tone, and community was built, right? Nobody saw a difference, you know, eventually, right?
Yeah, the only difference, Doug, is that we had to go to Michigan to play sports from time to time, and that was certainly an oddity by going over to Michigan, as I recall. We certainly got through it, but Michigan, you know, you go to a baseball game in Detroit, and you were just kind of on edge. You're a little bit nervous. It was during the 60s when the riots happened, and there was some unrest in Detroit, Michigan. And I remember going to my first Tigers game, and it was just an uneasy feeling being in a large city. As of Detroit, it was great to go to baseball games. Got to go to see the Red Wings play, not very often. but it was just, when you cross that border, things changed.
Yes.
It's funny, you spent your life playing hockey, and you probably never felt that kind of fear. Both going out on the ice against the toughest players in the world, that situation that you remember as a child was scarier than facing, the toughest guys in the NHL, right?
It was scarier than facing Doug Smith on the ice, right?
Well, not me. I mean, he wasn't worried about me. He would hold me over here while he took care of somebody else over here.
Oh, okay. I have a question for Tony, if you don't mind. It's very simple.
Okay.
How tall are you, Tony?
6'1".
Okay.
And what was the bulkiest you were? You said 205, but I know that was in your lean days. I think you bulked up a little bit heavier than 205, right, during your career?
Yeah, you know what, Doug? My last year I played at 219.
Okay.
So I basically gained about a pound a year, I guess, over 15 years.
Yeah.
Thereabouts. And then after my career was over, I just started eating not proper foods, and I ended up going up to, I think, 248 or something. And I got on a scale. I was in Toronto doing Off the Record on TSN, and I stayed at the Royal York, and they had digital scale. They didn't keep a scale at home. And I jumped on that thing, and it read 249. And I looked in the mirror, and I thought to myself, this isn't good. And I was playing in alumni hockey games, and I just was having trouble breathing. And I ended up freaking out, and I dropped down to 230, which is my weight today. I've stayed at 230 for a number of years. And what's your weight like now, Doug?
My weight's within a pound of when I was 18 and drafted. I range between 183 and 187 pounds, somewhere in that range. And I never move. It doesn't matter what I eat or don't eat. It seems to be stable. As long as I'm working out, I have to be moving. I have to be active. As soon as I become inactive, I seem to just waste away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but as long as I'm moving around, doing the thing, you too, probably. What are you doing for activity these days, Tony? Like, what do you do to stay in shape?
I've just got to click back on here. Something popped up on my screen. I just got to get rid of this.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
And thank you, boys, for not asking me what I bulked out at. Okay, I'm really grateful for that, because I've been all those weights. I've been all those weights.
I was thinking about it.
Were you? Well,
after the question, just for a laugh, I was thinking about it.
Well, you could have. I would have come up with a good answer, because I'm only 5'1". I'm only 5'1", so this was not good when I was there. I'm not there now, but there was a time.
And what about your kid?
Long hair.
What? Doug had long hair?
Yeah. I had the locks, that's for sure. I got some pictures coming out in the new hockey season, with the curls under the helmet type of thing.
Oh my God.
So how are your kids? How are your kids?
1982 at a disco on Sunset Boulevard.
See, this is why we have to stay friends for years after, because we all know too much. We'll always be friends now because we know too much.
And your family, Tony, the kids, how are the kids doing? Like, just tell the people who are watching, not where they are, but
it's really a joy, Doug, because the kids are very active, and it's interesting to see they just have a lot of energy, and they actually look like myself. When I get pictures of when I was that age, and it's amazing that the likeness that they have, and no, it just they live in a place where there's in California. They've got some of the nicest parks that you can imagine, and obviously typically near the ocean. And it's kind of funny, they've got a nanny because my son and his wife both work quite diligently. And the nannies, I went to the park with the nanny, and there's 15 nannies there, and they all sort of hang out in these beautiful parks. And that's sort of what their job is, but they kill probably 3 or 4 hours during the course of the day by going to these fabulous parks in California. Very clean. Actually, one of them's in El Segundo, Doug, which is my favorite park.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
Not far from the King's Crackers facility.
Oh.
So it just, these parks are just incredible. California, to me, Doug, California, Colorado, and even New York State are some of my favorite states in the country. But California being really high in the list, and you're so lucky that you had a chance to play there and experience that as a young person, I guess.
Well, at that age, it almost sucked me up and spit me out, not worth anything. It almost did. Another couple of years. I was there 5 years, so 5 years is quite a long time, and didn't want to be there for 3 of them, and it took a long time to get traded. As you know, it wasn't like today. They say they're going to ask to be traded the next day, and the news jumps all over it, and everything's all cordial. You probably experienced this. You wanted to get out of some places, but it wasn't your choice.
Yeah, I was going to say, Doug, at the end of my career, I played in San Diego. And to me, and again, it would have been very tempting if I was 20 years old, like you were when you first went there. My favorite thing was that when practice was over at noon, on any given day, there were 10 to 15 things you could do outdoors. One of which was golfing, one of which was driving. I lived on the ocean, and going to Tijuana and driving to LA. We used to go to the Kings game. Wayne Gretzky, his brother, played with me. So there were you could go to Vegas, you could go to Palm Springs, all these places that you could go to once that door opened up when practice was over, and nobody really knew who you were once you left that rink. Maybe one place near the rink where the guys used to hang out. Other than that, it was just nice to be able to do things. Growing up in Buffalo, early career, during the wintertime, snow, you went home and watched soap operas or watched TV in the afternoon, and you didn't really go too far other than going for lunch with the boys. But I mean, in California back then, there must have been a lot of temptation.
Well, my beach volleyball game was awesome. And that was the problem. I became disinterested in hockey because of the culture, and like you said, there was plenty to fill the gaps, right? You could get into as much trouble as you want. You could play whatever sport you want. I became a diver. I just looked for distractions, and I'm sure you were in towns where it wasn't comfortable being at the rink, right? So you'd look for other things to do.
I heard that you were a professional frisbee player.
Well, yeah, I'm efficient with the frisbee. I wouldn't call myself a professional frisbee player.
I've seen you.
You're busted, Doug. You're busted. I love California too. I've made hundreds of trips there. I'm actually going in November again for 10 days. I travel there frequently. And actually Friday, Doug, I'm picking up our colleague, Dr. Amin Modiri.
Oh, excellent.
He's flying into Edmonton on Friday, and he and I are going up north to work a retreat at the camp up north.
He comes in from Palm Springs, right?
Yeah, no, he's coming in from LAX this time.
Oh, okay. But he lives in Palm Springs. Yeah, okay.
He lives in Rancho Santa Margarita.
Okay,
and
Laguna Hills, right?
Yes.
Okay.
He's probably watching the show. I just did a show with him. We have a show every Tuesday morning at 9:00. I have an hour break, and then it's you guys. So Tuesdays, 2 shows. I'm done. I'm going to go find something else to do after you guys leave.
Will you come back? Tony, and see us again when the hockey season gets started? Love it if you would.
Yeah, I was going to say Laguna Beach. We used to go to Newport.
Yes.
That became a place to go. We had 3 or 4 days off. They had a golf course at the Marriott Resort, and Laguna was one of the places nearby, obviously Orange County. But that was a nice, we used to stay at the airport for years, Culver City, hockey rink to practice, and so on and so forth. But we actually had a practice rink in the mall in Newport Beach, which is adjacent to the hotel. Scotty Bowman, found out about it, and we ended up going to stay there, which was nice. There was an airport right there, maybe Ontario, so we could fly to Vegas and back in 30 minutes. North is just a wonderful area there.
Yes. Yeah, I was in Laguna Beach. Ramin took me there the last time I was down this time last year. We went there for the day. It was really lovely.
There's a place you want to see there, Larry, is Doug probably is aware of it, called Seal Beach.
Okay.
Yeah, very nice.
Okay.
It's in that proximity.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, listen, gentlemen, I hate to interrupt this great conversation, but I get to do the dirty work on the show. That's my job. And so I hate to end it because our time is almost up. So I just want to thank you, Tony, for being here with us today, and really look forward to talking with you again.
Yeah, they're very nice, and it was a good conversation, and it's always fun being with Doug.
Yes, I know, and I get to be with him every Tuesday. Aren't I a lucky girl?
And we get to plan things on the phone too together, so it's great.
Yeah.
It's just great being friends with both you guys.
Lucky me, but you know what? Lucky him. I've taught him everything he knows. Okay? Just saying.
And, somebody has to do it with Doug. Somebody has to.
Over to you, Mr. Host, for final thank yous and whatever you'd like to say.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you to Tony, and we'll see you very soon. I'm glad you met Jay. Laurie, it's always just amazing to be with you. Thank you for steering everything, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Well, just hang in there for a few minutes, guys, and we're just going to exit, and then we can come back in for a minute or two if you like. So here we go. Bye for now.
Have a great day.